Hello, welcome to the Horticulturalists. I am Matthew Lucas.
And I'm Stephen Ryan, and we post a video every Friday, so why not hit subscribe and the alert button so that you'll be aware of our daring do each week.
Daring do. And if you've got a daring question for Stephen Ryan, put it in the comments below, because every Monday we do a short answering your question, but do remember to put where you're from.
Yes, context is all.
It is.
So, guess where we are this week, Matthew?
I'm loving everything. I'm loving these stone discs. I'm loving this peppercorn tree. Where are we, Stephen?
All right, we're back at Roraima Nursery at Lara, just near the larger city of Geelong,
Yes.
In Victoria, at probably one of the most remarkable and quirky and interesting nursery/display gardens that you could possibly find.
Yes. Now, we've made a couple of videos here before, which we'll link, and we'll create a playlist. But today we're just looking at the display garden, not the nursery, because it is amazing. And not that I've been there, I've only seen a book, but it reminds me a little bit of the famous garden in California, Lotus Land.
It has that sort of quirkiness about it. I haven't been to Lotus Land either, I have to say. Remiss of both of us, really.
Let's go on a subsidised trip.
Yes, what a good idea.
Who will subsidise it?
Maybe some more subscribers will come on board and we'll make enough money out of YouTube to go to Lotus Land. How would that be?
Yes. Well, I think we should go off and meet Lyle and just talk about some of the wonderful things that are in this garden.
I think that's a fabulous idea. Why don't we do just that?
Let's go. Well, Lyle, good to see you again. Thank you for having us. I hope your Casurina sales have shot up from our last video.
Oh, thank you. Yes. Well, we certainly had a lot more inquiries about them, so which is good.
Really?
Yes.
You're joking?
Yes. Yep. It's amazing how many
good's
people
that?
have come out about it, and also asking about ones they've got in the garden and what
Yeah.
they should do with them.
Yeah. We are really here to talk about the garden.
Yeah. Well, and Lyle as well.
Yes.
What I would like to know, Lyle, and this is something I've never asked, so now I will find out, is about your background. Where did you start? What sort of led you in the direction of horticulture and eventually culminating in where we are today? So where, in fact, did you start?
Okay, well, I suppose I was brought up in a sort of a horticultural family. My mother and my parents were gardeners, so we were interested in plants, but not collectors. And I was brought up on an orchard up near Robinvale, near Mildura, so we had citrus and grapes and stone fruit, and so I was brought up within that, but probably not a huge interest. And then when we came down to Geelong and into Bells Beach, and we had acreage, and I was gardening and collecting and growing seedlings as you do. But then I started,
as some people do.
But then I started work in Roraima Nursery, which is the old-fashioned nursery of nursery and gardens, and that really probably started me on the broader range of plants that are available, and how to use them in the landscape, and also propagation and growing and things like that.
Now, when you say you started working at Roraima, did you go through any formal training, or was it just passion that took you in that direction?
It was started off, I was actually training to be more in environmental science, to go into the national parks. I always wanted to be a ranger, to work with plants, but not horticulturally.
Yeah.
And then when I was studying for that, I got a part-time job at Roraima Nursery after I talked to the owner, Judy Bailey, about plants, and she saw my interest in them, and then she offered me a job, and I sort of worked there and never left.
Oh, so there you go. So it's one of those serendipitous things that happen in life.
It is. Yeah, it just happened to be that nursery, which was the icon of our region, that got me interested.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, I certainly remember the nursery well myself, because I used to go down there periodically to see Julie, and it was one of those places that had all sorts of weird and wonderful plants that in a lot of cases I couldn't grow at Mount Macedon, but nonetheless it was always a great place to visit and have a look at stuff.
Yes, a broad range.
Yeah.
And in those days it wasn't like, things weren't as available, and you had to travel if you wanted something unusual. So
the days before the internet.
The internet,
e-commerce.
yeah.
So from those days to here, were the things that you developed and interested in then that were sort of manifested here in some of your collections?
I think my training was that I sort of went through the basics there, and my parents had 11 acres, and I sort of went through where I was developing the 11 acres, and I would look at oaks, and I'd look at elms, and I'd look at Judas trees, and then I would plant them all out. So I would go through all the oaks, and then as much as I could find out, plant them out, and then I sort of learnt the variety. But then when you start then going to like searching for things overseas, or getting want the ones that aren't in Australia, then that takes you to a whole new level. But it's
called obsession.
and collecting as a group.
Yeah.
Then keeping that group, and then moving on and getting the next group, and then moving on. So every group that I've collected, I've still got 95% of each collection.
So you haven't sort of like some people sort of just lost interest in a group.
No.
You've got a good representative collection of them, and then you're...
Been there and done that.
Yeah.
But it's all still here.
And it's all still here. Yeah.
So that does raise one issue before we actually talk about the nursery as a whole. How big a site are we working on?
So the nursery is about 7 acres altogether here,
Yeah.
but probably in the display garden is probably a couple of acres, and then the nursery and gardens is probably another couple of acres.
Yeah.
But it's very highly put together, so the time you've been through it could be 20 acres because you don't get to see everything at once.
No, it's a labyrinth and it's fantastic. Now, what came first, or were they simultaneous? Did you always want the nursery with the garden, or was the garden a secondary part of the nursery?
So the idea was, when I started growing stuff, then I thought, well, I've got so much stuff I need to sell at markets.
Yeah.
So I was working at the nursery and then selling at markets, and then I thought, well, it's silly to take plants to the people. Let the people come to the plants. The whole idea was to get land so I could plant my collections in the ground and see the potential. So I just wanted to get land, so I could start planting. Because I know, you've got to put things in for trees to see their size.
Yep.
So the push was to get land. And luckily we came to here, which was an old nursery. But
So it was a nursery site?
It was an old nursery site. So it had a bit of the infrastructure. It had its day.
Yeah.
So we closed it down for 6 months while I sort of half cleaned it up and then opened up a section and then worked on it, opened up another section, worked on it until a full area was open.
And how long ago was that? So how established is this garden?
So it started in the early 2000s. So we came here about 2000 and 2001.
I was going to say not that long ago, but that is...
So
yes, remember.
25 years ago.
Yeah, that's right.
22 years we've been here. But amazing, we've got trees that are 25 metres tall that have been growing for 20 years. So the right things in the right spot can grow big. You can also cheat, which is find something big in somebody else's garden and dig it up and bring it here.
Yeah, that's right. So you've done a lot of door knocking over the years.
So I'm very accomplished at knock knock. Hello, do you really like that plant over there? I'm interested in buying it.
Yeah.
And it's amazing, most people, A, will either give it to you because they hate it.
Yeah.
B, they don't appreciate its value.
Yeah.
But you also, horticulture, you've got to know that you can transplant it.
Yeah, well, that's
So
right. Some things
it can
won't.
only be things that you can either move, big giant succulents or palms, or something you can move when it's dormant if it's deciduous.
Yeah.
So you need to know what you're doing before you can do that.
And you need to have a certain amount of enthusiasm and strength, I would have thought, to take
Yes.
it down that path. Yes.
And some friends.
You need to be able to think about, logistics. How can I move it?
We might get you to show us something that you moved as a mature plant later on, because that would be fascinating to see.
Well, there's actually one behind here with a big trunk.
Oh, yeah?
It's a 12-metre high Brachychiton that came out of a block of units in Geelong at 12 metres
really?
high.
Wow. And what was the logistics of, well, this is very
Well,
interesting.
it's 12 metres and it's a 12-metre truck, so I thought that could lay down on a truck.
Oh, dear.
How wide do you go digging out the root ball?
So depending on the variety, with Brachychitons, they are a succulent, so you don't need a lot of roots. So it was only about 1.8 by 1.8, but when it came out bare root. So it only had
so everything fell off, yeah.
Because they don't have much roots. So as long as you can stick it back in and secure it, it will regrow.
Goodness me.
Yeah. But if it was a 12-metre high oak tree,
Yeah.
you might need to take a 4 by 4 metre root plate.
Yeah, you need
and
to take a
then
huge
logistics, how do you get a 4 metre root plate down the freeway? So it doesn't work.
Back to your point about knowing what the plant is and how to move it.
Yep.
So how long ago was this Brachychiton moved into place?
It was probably about 15 years ago. It was when the start of the garden was being constructed.
Yeah.
When we could get cranes and things in to do it. So this came out of a block that was going to get knocked down for units.
Right.
So we were rescued. But at the time it was 12 metres high.
Yes.
So it's still as big as it is now. But I thought, well, 12 metres high, I can get a semi-trailer for that.
Yep.
And because it was such a tall, narrow one, I was able to reduce the canopy and get the width in.
Right.
And with Brachychitons, they don't need much root system, so we could take out a minimal root. And
Right. So really you were bringing home a trunk with a few little bits hanging
so
off it.
just like a pole with a bit of root and a bit of top,
Yeah.
but the potential to grow another
Now,
tree from it.
I note that this one has a slight lean.
Yes.
What's that all about?
So it was straight when we put it in, and it was tethered,
Yes.
but it did slump over the years, and by then it was probably too hard to re-straighten it. But I thought, well, it did what it did, and it's going to be part of the character.
Yep.
And it's sort of leaning out from the mound, and then the top will go straight. So it's going to be.
I think it's actually good. I quite like the fact that it's not dead straight.
No.
So I think it adds character to the
does.
tree.
And the top is, you know, will grow straight and be natural anyway. So it looks like it's bending out from the mound.
Fantastic.
Yep.
But now, for everyone watching, we are going to go and take you around some of the garden because there's some amazing features of the garden. I mean, one of the things is actually the hard landscaping, which we'll go and talk to you about. The second thing is your use of found material, which is amazing. And then maybe we'll just ask you to show us some of your favourite things.
Sure, no worries.
Well, let's go.
Okay.
So Lyle, one of the things about this space is the hard landscaping. So there are so many little mounds, there's dells, there's dams. So what was here when you first arrived?
When we first came here, this was actually just a very flat paddock.
Because it's very flat land around about.
It is, yeah. Lara is pretty flat and can be flood prone.
Yes.
So we have heavy ground that can be very dry during summer and waterlogged during winter. So horticulturally, we need
That sounds like heaven.
We need to-
culturally.
Yeah, so we need to fix that, but also to create interest. I always wanted to, you know, raise mounds, you know, block views, create avenues where you don't see everything at once.
Yep.
And you can do that with your landscape, with where you place things.
Yeah.
So luckily when we came here, we're right beside a big freeway and they were putting extra lanes on.
Yeah.
And I negotiated with them to bring all the extra soil and into the paddock. So I got a win by getting free soil.
I was going to say you got it absolutely for nothing.
They got a win.
Wow.
They got a win for getting stuff that they probably quoted on to pay and got it
Oh,
for
'cause
free,
they were-
and
yeah,
then made money out of their contract.
Yeah.
And they didn't have to cart it too far.
No.
So what ended up happening is we had B doubles waiting at the gate for 2 weeks solid.
Yeah.
And they put a D7 bulldozer in at their cost.
Yeah.
And for those 2 weeks, we just pushed, mounded, and I created on the wing. And
So it was all done on the run. You didn't have any plans or anything.
in my mind, I did.
Yeah.
But as more soil came, we kept going. And so
Dump it
and it's
there.
like, well, let's make another mound over here. Let's
Yep.
push that over and let's dig this out. So I was able to create something 100%, 1,000% more definition than I would have
Yeah.
done by myself.
Now,
By sheer chance, but also by asking, by seeing something. I need to get soil. There's an opportunity.
yeah.
Get it.
So go and ask. Yeah.
And a lot of the stuff in the nursery, the items that are here, the plants, it's about being forward.
Yeah.
If you see something, keep your eye out, ask, negotiate.
Yeah.
You know, and
Well,
you
I've
get
got. I want to ask something. So, did you keep tabs on just how much soil came into this place? Do you know how much you ended up with?
I didn't actually count the trucks, but I'd say there must be multi-thousands of
Yeah, cubic
meters
meters.
of soil.
I mean, there's a lot of landscaping.
From the original level, some of the heights are probably maybe 5 meters, 6 meters high to some of the hills.
That's a lot of
from
fill.
the original soil.
And there's a dell here. Did you excavate as well, or you?
So
only...
that's the natural ground level. So the lower dells are the natural ground level,
Right.
and everything else is raised up.
And so once you've piled this up, I imagine if it was a scraping for the freeway, it's relatively surface soil, topsoil.
Well, no. So,
So what's the condition of it? What
Yeah.
did you have to do to it?
so everything that came, every truckload was almost different. It could be tarmac, it could be clay, it could be soil, it could be a mixture of all three. It was, every truckload was different.
And you weren't allowed to be picky.
No.
Yes, you take that one away.
When you get stuff for free, if it was a particularly bad one, you say, well,
Dump it over there.
dump it over there and we'll put better stuff on top. But the whole idea with this garden being dry land and sort of very little water or no water is height negates bad soil to a certain degree because you've got drainage with raising it. So even if it's heavier soil and it's raised, it's going to dry out quicker than being flat.
And then did you do anything? I mean, did you mulch it? Did you put anything on it? Or you just let
No,
nature take
virtually I just shaped it, started planting. I started planting from the tops of the mounds down
Yeah.
because I left the valleys open to be able to get machinery in to bring in plants or products.
Everything
or
has to be
stone.
done.
Yeah.
So I had to work from the top down and then the back out
Yeah.
to make sure I could get the things in I wanted to at the time.
Wow.
Yeah.
And how long did all that take?
We probably worked on it. This was the spare time garden. So the main nursery and garden was the full time.
Yeah.
So we probably worked on it. We probably worked on it for 15 years,
Oh,
16 years
Wow.
before I made a decision that I think I might open it.
Yeah.
And it wasn't finished then, but in 6 months we did a lot of edging and forced me to open it.
Yeah.
So about 2017 we opened to the display garden section to the public, and it's been open ever since.
And then with the delivery of the soil, how long was that window?
So that was 2 weeks.
So all of this was done in 2 weeks.
2 weeks,
the hard
yes.
landscaping.
Yeah.
Wow.
Goodness gracious me.
Yeah.
Now, the garden itself, of course, has lots of aspects about it, and I can immediately say, all right, well, it's a tourist attraction in its own right, so it must bring people in who are not specifically coming to look at buying a plant, but they come in to look around the garden, I assume.
Yeah, so the garden is my plaything, but
Yeah.
it has a secondary role where it does, entice people to come in.
Yeah.
It creates areas where people will see plants in larger form,
Yeah.
also used in different ways,
Yep.
and in combination with other things to accentuate it.
Yeah.
So putting all those things together, and I think the concept of it is original ideas.
Yeah.
Is out here, it's my ideas, what I dream about. I find an object, what can I do with it? Where can I put it? I get an interesting plant, what can I do with it? Do I need 10 of it? Do I need one? Where's,
You never need one.
where's the best way to show it? So this garden is a combination of what's in my head.
Yeah.
And it's that collectability, the wanting to see things grow, using it for stock.
Yes, well, I was going to say the other obvious advantage of having something like this is that you've got plants that you can use for stock plants. So you've got cuttings and seed and seedlings and other things that you can access via the garden. So it's not just a display garden, is it really, in a way?
Yes, because our nursery, we grow probably 70% of the stuff that we sell.
Yeah.
And it's the unusual things you can't buy in. The nursery is a resource, so I can do all the propagation techniques you've said.
Yeah.
And things flower, they may grow for 15 years and flower, then I can have thousands of seedlings of that thing.
Yeah.
So it is self-perpetuating with that.
Yeah.
And we have so much material that we could probably do 10 nurseries.
Yeah.
But,
But there's a limit, though, isn't there, too? The other thing when you're working with unusual and interesting plants, if you did propagate 100,000 of something, there isn't a market.
no.
So you have to actually sort of tailor what you propagate to what you think the market is going to be able to absorb. Otherwise, you're growing plants for no purpose
It's a risk.
at all.
It's a risk. And also, with having the resource here, like we do a large variety in small numbers.
Yeah.
But because I've got the resource for most of it, if an order comes in and they want 200 of something,
You
I
can
say,
do it.
well, I've got a stock plant, I can cut that up and really 3 months I can quote you.
Yeah.
And it's all my own product, so it's great.
Yeah.
Well, you mentioned some of the things that you found to plant things in. So I think we should go and look at how you've used found objects, particularly big industrial waste objects, to such a great effect in the garden. Because that was I came here before I knew you, and that was the two things that struck me. One, the use of those huge iron things, and then the secondly, as you also just referred to, just the mix of things, the mixing together of all sorts of different plants from different regions. So let's go and have a look.
No worries. Yeah. So some of the things that you're talking about, there's probably 3 things that are: A, is it a standalone thing? Does that piece just, you can put it there and it looks great, amazingly?
Yeah.
B, can I do something with it? Does it hold soil? Then I can put plants in it.
Yes.
Or C, sometimes you might find somewhere in a warehouse and there's 50 of this object. Well, there's 50 of this unusual thing. What can I do with 50 that you would normally you couldn't do?
Yeah.
So
Well, I have
all
to
those sort of things
say,
come together.
for me, your genius is the fact that you can take a found object, put it into the garden, and it becomes an integral part of the garden. Whereas some people who have found objects end up with a barrow load of petunias, or a toaster with succulents in, and it still looks like its original form, and it's not really then adding to the garden. You're not really recycling; you're just not throwing away.
No, that's right. Yes, yeah, keeping.
Let's go and have a look.
All right,
good.
Okay.
So Lyle, wandering through your garden, you come across these amazing moments, the Lara Stonehenge. Where did these stones come from, and why did you decide you couldn't live without them?
Oh, just one of those things when you're visiting quarries and you're looking at stone and there's a group on a pallet and you sort of think, well, they're pretty cool stones. What could I do with them? And I thought, well, I could raise them up and have them vertical and do like a little mini Stonehenge in a small scale. But the way they're tapered, the cut marks, they're probably offcuts from making other stone blocks.
Yeah.
But using them in a different way becomes their own little sculpture, and then all the sempervivums and echiverias underneath just highlight them.
Which look beautiful. But wait, there is more. So just here, edging the border there, are these amazing round stones which look like something, I don't know, from a lost civilization in the Pacific. Where are they from?
So these are only sort of new rocks, really.
Yeah.
So these are basalt stones. They're actually internal cores from drilling down into the ground. So from a big overpass that was in a nearby town where they're building a new railway, they had to core down in through the basalt or the lava flows.
Wow.
And these cylinders are inside the drills. So they were going to be crushed. And then a local Lara guy who was working there said to me that you probably like these. And so from there, when a truckload, we've saved all these from being crushed.
Yeah.
But also now they've become part of the landscape.
They are really, really beautiful. And again, I'm going to cunningly spin the camera around because behind us is this mad Sputnik sculpture. Do you want to come around and tell us what's going on with this?
Yeah, so I started off with the central, that's a sandstone carved ball.
Yeah.
That was bought, and I thought I need to elevate it, what can I do? So we made the steel structure like a comet.
Yeah.
With the radial things that are coming off there. So just something, one of those things, you start off with an object, how can I do it? And then it grows, and then it becomes a sculpture in its own right.
There you go. Well, it's fabulous. And it's one of those, everywhere you turn, there are like whimsical, quite amusing moments. It's not a serious garden.
No, it's an idea formed from an item, or I might have seen something and have taken it to another level.
Yeah.
But it's an accumulation of ideas over 20 years, and it's still evolving, of course.
Yeah, yeah.
And it depends on the time, and it normally starts off sparked by a single item.
Yeah.
And then it grows from there. I find something, and then I think, what can I do with that? Or I need to elevate it, or I need to make something to elevate it, or I need to embed that in something, and I'll make a frame for it. So a lot of thinking goes under these projects.
I'm sure. Well, there's a lot of metalwork here too, so let's go and talk about some of that.
Yes.
All right, I can't believe that I'm wandering around a garden and what I see is an enormous, great, well, digger, I guess.
Yes. So it's a big excavation bucket.
Yeah, so it's huge. And I guess ordinarily it would have just gone off to be recycled as
Scrap it was going to. I found it in a scrap metal yard. It was about to go to China.
Was it really?
So they're 4 tonne each, empty.
Yeah.
And we had a pair of them. I thought, well, they're too amazing to do. So we embedded them into the embankment here.
Yes.
Putting these bonsai bottle trees, so Queensland bottle trees.
I was going to say, they're not ever going to get particularly big, are they now? Because you've got them restrained within this huge big digger. But it's the combination. You've got industrial sort of metal things, and we'll see some more of them as we go around the garden. You've got an interesting collection of very structural plant material, and you've got yet more of the blue glass, which I think is almost a motif of your garden in a way. But all of the plant material is all there to decorate but not hide what you've tried to put.
It's in layers. So the feet here, we've got a native Casurina, but a cross-straight form.
Oh yes.
In the shade and dry underneath is Gasterias from Africa.
Yeah, and they love that sort of aspect, don't they? They grow under shrubs in the wild.
Dry. And then you've got the cascading with the Graptoverias, the glass, the bottle tree, the steel. It's about creating a scene of different layers.
It's amazing. So yes, other people would not have seen what you have seen, Lyle.
No. Luckily these already had big holes in the base, so that was one concern. But if it didn't, it would have been a very hard task to blow a hole in the base.
Yeah, I was going to say, these are big and solid, these things.
So then we would have had to change the planning. So I could have had it as a saturated bucket, so I could have filled up the soil, knowing that it was going to be full of water. Then maybe I could have put a group of swamp cypress.
Yeah, so there are other alternatives you could have gone for.
I would have planted a plant that like bog.
Yeah, so there you go.
So just to think about the planting, this is going to be dry, bottle trees. If it was going to be full of water and soil, I could use a plant that likes saturated soils.
Oh, fantastic. Well, I think it looks fabulous, so I'll take it.
No worries. Yep.
Now, there are some objects which are just objects. You haven't planted them. What's the story behind these things?
So some things are such a wonderful piece by themselves, you don't really want to wreck them.
No.
So this is a big, probably pressure tank. Would have been in the mining industry in Victoria's early history.
Yeah.
So it would have been built by blacksmiths. So all handmade, all the rivets all hand beaten.
Yeah.
So just as a sculpture by itself, you could, to commission that would be amazing. It would cost a lot of money.
Yeah.
But as an object, just as it is, and with history.
Yeah.
So we just elevated it onto the big rocks and left it as a big species, specimen.
And how do you go about choosing what to surround it with in terms of the planting, or is it just organic, if you pardon the pun?
It's half and half, so it has to be, you don't want to plant something tall in front to cover it.
Yeah.
and you know the aspect is hot and dry, so the cacti and echeverias and things, but it's kept pretty simple.
Yeah.
So it's relying a lot on the texture of the cactus and the rock, and then the blue glass there to add a bit of colour.
Now this is what I want. We were just filming, and one of your visitors asked you what this was. So just,
It's glass, yes. Yeah. So it spoils from a glass factory. Yep.
so just tell our viewers, what is this amazing sort of tealy, aqua-coloured glass?
Yep.
Is it
So
glass?
we use a lot of it in the garden, and it's an item that I acquired. It's probably spoils from a glass factory. It looks a bit like volcanic glass,
Yeah.
but it's actually
Just glass.
glass, and it must have been a spoil out of a factory, and they've had to chip it out. But when you use that glass in the garden and elevate it or incorporate it into sculpture, it adds colour and play with light when things aren't flowering. So in this garden, flowers are not, the garden's not built for flowers or colour.
Yeah.
The flowers are a bonus. It
Yeah.
looks good all the time because everything's architectural or or put in a certain place.
Yeah. Stunning. Well, let's go and look at your use of metal as a planter, because that's also what you've done. You've got objects as objects and then objects as planters.
It is.
Let's go.
Let's go.
Lyle, one of the other many things that I've seen in your garden is the cunning use of chimney pots.
Yes.
Now, here you've got aloes. So again, talk me through that. What happened first? You found the chimney pots, decided to use them, or?
Yeah, so chimney pots are cool things. Yeah, you see them. A lot of people are
They're cool things.
they're demolishing their houses.
Yeah.
Things are getting reclaimed. And you start looking at chimney pots, there's no two chimney pots look the same. There's a lot of difference.
And they're all terracotta largely.
There's terracotta, there's salt glazes, there's a lot of different varieties.
Yeah.
The main thing is they are a pipe.
Yeah.
So you can sit them on top of the ground, fill them up with soil and grow a plant in it that could actually grow down into the ground, but you use the pipe to elevate the plant
Yeah.
to give you a different height in the garden.
I see, because I got some chimney pots and I use them as stands with a pot on top, which of course you could do as well.
Yep, so you can use them as a pedestal.
Yeah.
They could some of them are so nice, you could just sit them on a wall and just have them to look at as they are because they're a work of art themselves.
Yeah, which you've got some over there, which we'll show.
Yep.
What about choice of plants in them? Because obviously you don't want anything with a massive root system that might crack it. So what do you choose?
So generally,
these are aloes.
yeah, succulents that don't have much roots, or something that has a very fibrous root system.
Yeah.
Because you don't want a shrub or a tree, as you said, because with the expansion of the roots, it will break it.
Great use of urban waste.
It is.
Lyle.
Yes.
I mean, it's
recycling.
I know, it's all around us. There's amazing things. But there's one other element to your garden we might go and show our viewers, which perhaps those in the States will not have ever seen.
Yes. So within the nursery here, because we've created a bit of an oasis with trees and there's a lake and things like that, it's become a very much a microclimate. And from there, we've actually had a greyheaded flying fox colony move in. So in the last 20 years, they started off at 6 individuals.
Yeah.
And now we have several thousand.
The word's gone out. Well, let's go and have a look.
Yes, no worries.
Well, here they are. And you can probably see the colony hanging over there. So what are they again?
So they're called grey-headed flying foxes.
Yeah.
So they can be a metre across, so they're
Yeah.
quite large bats.
Yeah.
They roost here during the day,
Yeah.
and then they fly off up to 100 150 k's radius every night feeding. Then they come back here the next morning at 4 o'clock.
At 4 a.m.
4 a.m.
And do you hear them every morning at 4 a.m.?
When
There's a lot of bats,
They're
Lyle.
quite raucous in the morning, and they do wake you up, yes.
Yeah, I mean, they're relatively noisy now and it's midday.
Yep.
So what are they going off and feeding on?
So they're omnivores, so they're, fruit, flowers, things like that. So insects, if they can probably lay their hands on them.
Yeah.
They're mainly fruit and flowers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I did read, I think they play quite an important role in pollination with eucalypts particularly.
Yes, yeah. So they are one of the pollinators of the forest. So and also spreading of seeds. So when they're eating the fruit and they're flying away and their droppings contain the seeds and they spread the species diversity through the forest.
Yeah. And here we are in your garden. I mean, one doesn't like to speak of such things, but are they a problem? Because they found you, they found this beautiful oasis and decided, hey, we're going to move in, and told their mates. So has it become a problem for you?
So when they're in small numbers, they were fantastic. But with the larger numbers now, it's too small an area and the public are too close. So with the amount that's there, the noise, the inevitable smell, it is too much in a small area.
What's the solution?
There's not much of a solution because they're a protected species.
Yeah.
So we have to learn to live with them as much as we can.
Yeah. We spoke to Tim Entwistle, who was the former director of the Melbourne Botanic Gardens, and they had a massive problem which caused a great deal of public outcry when they finally it was agreed that they could move the colony to another spot.
Yes. So that was a thing they did prior probably to more movement. Now they wouldn't be allowed to do it. So they got it done before, you know, issues that have arrived against doing that. But
So
it moved to a better area, less public to annoy them. They would actually have better roosting because they're not getting annoyed by the public.
yeah.
So where they went to is better than where they were.
Yeah. But for you, it's you and the bats off into the horizon.
Horizon,
Or the
yes.
sunset.
So the other sort of whammy that we have here is we have the bats by day and then we have ibis by night. So there's a changeover and more dusk and dawn.
Oh
So
my goodness.
as the bats are leaving at night, the ibis colony moves in and roosts at night, and then as the ibis move off in the morning, the bats are back.
So this is all the ibis poo, I think I can see.
So the white is the ibis poo, and then the other colours are probably the bat poos.
Well, there you go.
Yeah, you get to know a lot about poo after a colony of it.
Stephen, isn't this an amazing place?
I find it fascinating. Every time I come here,
Me too.
I meet new plants, I see new ideas. I mean, Lyle is just full of all sorts of enthusiasm and amazing talent.
Yeah. I mean, we left with a car full last time.
And we will again this time, undoubtedly.
I mean, I visited this garden before I knew Lyle, and it's just so fascinating to hear him talk about the very organic nature of this. So there was no master plan. The soil was just dumped. He had to make do with it in 2 weeks. And then the found objects, he just feels his way with them.
Yeah, I think it's fabulous. And it does go to show that some people do have innate talent. And that's what it's about.
And others don't.
Yes, some don't.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned this at the beginning. I've been into gardens where people have used found objects and broken teapots, and it's just a bit kitsch, whereas this isn't.
They're still broken teapots. And just in passing, anybody who's ever been to Derek Jarman's garden down at Dungeness is a perfect example. You've got a black cottage standing on shingle, and the garden is made up basically of all found objects that were found on the beach and around the Dungeness nuclear power plant. And a neighbour of his thought that because everybody was coming in there having a look, he'd do the same thing, and he ended up with something that looked like a junk pile.
Yeah, you've got to be a bit of a poet, a bit of an artist. I mean, just to get the levels, the textures, the sculptural nature of it all, you've got to have a good eye.
Yes, I think you do.
Well, if you want to know what we're doing next week with our collective good eyes, you'll have to hit subscribe.
Yes, and come and join us again. And we've no idea what we're going to be doing at this point, but it'll be something interesting, I'm sure.
So look forward to seeing you next Friday.
Bye all.